of the Phoenix, creating a center of excellence in an unfriendly environment. Our presenter, Hans Ekman, provides linkage, leadership, and consulting for rapidly changing companies. With 17 of his over 20+ years experience creating workflow optimization solutions across diverse industries. He currently serves as GVP and Innovation Practice Program Manager at SunTrust Bank, where he provides process improvement and mentoring to the SunTrust Business Analyst Center of Excellence. Hans has presented at Building Business Capacity, IIBA International Conference, Project World, the IMF, IIBA Professional Development Days, Project World, and World Congress for Business Analysts, and other professional organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our speaker, Hans Ekman.
Thank you. All right, so first, thanks for coming out here. If anyone is hoping that I'm going to stand up here and lecture and read slides for you and then save 5 minutes at the end for questions, maybe you might want to pick a different session. This is going to be very interactive. I only have 9 slides, and I'm used to doing this in about an hour, and we have an hour and 15 minutes. So this is going to be very engaging. So those of you that are nervous, this is a wireless mic. I will be walking all the way to the back if I need to. So I hope it doesn't come to that. Also, I have business cards and free photos that if you want to stick to your desk or whatever, and if this mic keeps doing that, I am going to turn the mic off. That thing keeps feeding back. All right, there should be no trouble hearing me in this small of a room. So please, grab a photo, grab 2 if you'd like it. That's one of my favorite Darwin quotes. There's some in the front, some in the back, and make sure to do that. For those of you that are tweeting, again, hashtag BAWWIN for this event, and the group that's putting this on is at Project Summit, so please feel free to use those. My Twitter ID is Hans Ekman, and for those of you that don't know, at BAOT is at Business Analysis on Twitter. It is a universal, worldwide tag for all discussions related to business analysis, so I really encourage you to use that. So, of course, we got to start with a few ground rules. First, I already know this content, so it's going to be really boring for me to just tell you about it. Instead, this is really a discussion. There are a million different variations of centers of excellence, how they could get implemented, challenges you're going to have. So our story, how we got one fully funded and charter, well, charter, never funded, is going to be a source just to discuss how you're seeing challenges in your organizations, other ways that you may be able to learn from some of our mistakes and see what we did, and talk through, even strategies of how do you get this. Almost any one of you could form a center of excellence in your organization. I know that's hard to believe, but if we could do it in our organization, I'm confident that almost anyone can. With that being said, interrupt me, stop me. This is going to be a discussion, if I haven't made that really clear. Also, the universal disclaimer here, this content is my sole responsibility. The opinions that I'm going to express definitely do not reflect that of my employer, so they disavow knowledge of what I'm about to say. Also, absolutely no animals were harmed during the creation of this presentation, but I really encourage you to support your local pet rescue groups. So, to start off, let me give you a little bit of background on our organization and where this started. So, after a transformation that happened under the name Project 2010, we realigned so that every line of business was aligned to one or more work streams that supported the applications that were used in that business area. Seems to make sense. And then underneath that, so underneath our delivery organization, we had basically some areas that were across all work streams, across all lines of businesses, like shared services, platforms like our SOA platform that could be used across multiple application areas, our enterprise testing and release organization, our enterprise infrastructure, and then other stakeholders like regulatory, compliance, security, that all played a part in all projects. So when we're talking about this, our Center of Excellence, we worked exclusively on the delivery and IT side. There are business analysts in the business side, They often were not true BAs. They were just BA titles or using the BA job family to hire people. So we focused exclusively on the BAs. So with that, we existed in a matrixed organization. So we were really split between the groups that actually influenced and affected the BAs. One, we had professional development managers. So basically, so that the delivery managers could focus on delivery and IT projects, we took all the HR responsibilities, all the onboarding, all the hiring, staffing, annual reviews, all of that stuff we love so much, and moved it to dedicated managers. That way, a single manager over BAs could have up to 40 people technically reporting to them for HR functions, but didn't have to be involved on a day-to-day task management for them. We also had a project management office, a PMO, that was really kind of the regulatory board. They supported our process, our governance, and our tools. So with the transformation, for the first time, we brought in a requirements management platform. We brought in an official methodology and processes. We started, they brought in templates to use, so that everyone was starting, and we were trying to align what the BA did to the IIBA and the BA body of knowledge. So for the first time, we had quantified what the role was, and we're trying to standardize it and then bring everybody up to the same level. Because as you know, how many people here, when they grew up, told everyone, I'm going to be a business analyst when I grow up? And nobody? Did anybody go to school and intend to become a BA? How many people here accidentally found out that they were BAs before they even knew what the title was, and they just really loved it? My degree is in zoology. I mean, how far can you get from business analysis? So a lot of us fall into that. And then with the work streams in a matrix organization, the BAs were assigned out to different work streams. So they worked on projects in that area. The task management was done by the delivery managers, but really, they really didn't care anything about the role. They didn't care about training. They didn't care often about the process. So when we talk about a center of excellence, there's kind of two models that come. One is a center of excellence, and the other is called a community of practice. So a center of excellence can be formed two ways. One is, it's a small group of thought leaders who are trying to influence or transform business analysis within a certain domain. So basically, it's the people that are willing to stick their neck out and get it chopped off time and time again, trying to make things better. Kind of like you do every day on a project, just trying to get things to go. Some organizations call their entire practice a center of excellence, meaning they have set universal standards of behavior. To me, and by common definition, that's actually a community of practice. A community of practice is a group of individuals who are doing the same thing or aligned to the same goals, working together to share knowledge, to support each other to work. So who here has any sort of center of excellence or community of practice at their organization? What do you have? How does yours work?
It's like board of brothers come together and talk about stuff. So each month we meet and talk about it.
Okay, so it's knowledge sharing. It's formalized water cooler talk, so you can learn from each other's success and failures. You have one?
We have one, but interestingly enough, nobody knows that they need to vote them.
Excellent, flying under the radar. That's good.
They're all in community practice, and they're people who do stuff that is really communicated amongst the department or even corporations.
Yep, absolutely. Who else had one? There were two more hands. Yep.
The project management office, as part of that, we host PM committee meetings every couple of months and monthly webinars just to meet, discuss, and talk.
Excellent. So a lot of those, so one of the things I'm hearing is a lot of the COEs, especially as they're starting off, tend to be information forums, a chance to share. For our organization, our matrixed organization actually provided that. So we had monthly BA meetings sponsored by the PDMs. They had guest speakers. We shared information. And so that was one forum. So for us, the missing gap was who's actually being an advocate for the BAs and trying to make things a little bit better. So I mentioned a little bit about Project 2010 and the transformation. With this, the PMO had established governance, templates. For the first time, we had something, a line in the sand we could work against. And so the PMO really was responsible for those templates and those tools. But like a PMO, it was PM focused. Our organization is extremely PM centric, which means all other roles are neglected or are at the discretion of the PM, whatever they think needs to be done. And that's something we've had to work against as well. And again, the PDMs were really responsible for that training and actually for the role itself. So after we did this transformation, the first time we had tools, we had templates, we had standards, and then the project ends so we don't do anything else to fix anything else and don't try and improve anything after that and just let it die. How many people work on projects like that? You wait till a system breaks, you replace it, you get all excited because it works, and then you neglect it until it dies and you have to replace it again. I mean, that's kind of the official IT life cycle, it seems, of our project investing. Well, that's what we were afraid of, is we were really afraid that this momentum we had, these challenges we had faced and overcome, were going to die. And we also knew that now we officially had BAs as a role, but not all BAs had the same skill level. They didn't have the same approach. And in a lot of work streams, they were being absolutely abused. Does anybody define their BA role unofficially in the organization as the official note taker and meeting scheduler of the PM? I mean, it's sad, but that's the reality we face. It's an underappreciated role. A certain large retail organization that is no longer in Canada due to their lack of planning and business analysis to begin with is going agile in all of their projects and eliminating every BA. Because if you're going agile, you don't need a BA. You have product managers, so they'll just make all the decisions. Watch what happens in the next couple of years when that comes crashing. Unless they just rename and retitle their BAs, and then they might be okay.
But they didn't, they actually cut them.
They cut them completely, yeah. Horrible mistake after horrible mistake. So how did ours start? Where did our journey start? Because we had a practice, and in our organization we had around 80 to 90 full-time BAs. We could have an additional 20 to 150 contract BAs at any time, not counting any offshore resources that were doing BA-like activities, and not counting the 150 or so business BAs in our line of business. And so really, what ended up happening is, we accidentally realized that there were 3 people who were trying to make things better, and it might be a good idea for us to talk and coordinate our efforts. The first was Kim McClandry, and she was kind of coordinating training, a lot of the BA mentoring activities, and working with the PDMs, and then became a PDM. So really, she had ownership and was concerned with the role, and with bringing people up to par and trying to bring people up to industry standards. Russ Pena worked for the PMO. He was the official BA trainer. He wrote the training. He was the one who's worked with all our tool integrations. So as the project, from a project governance standpoint, he was the advocate. And I was the chief troublemaker. I came in and was appalled at the conditions. I hated the templates. There were so many process gaps. Our projects didn't do non-functional requirements. Just didn't exist. Nobody even thought or didn't know what they were. And so I started poking holes and started changing things. So I was working with the PMO to implement. I'd create a new template, and then I'd work with Russ to get it in. I'd see a training deficit, and I'd try and work with Kim to do that. Kim and Russ were meeting. So what we decided was we just unofficially started meeting every week to compare and prioritize work. Anybody kind of got those unofficial little work groups going on now? Couple people? Absolutely. And that can be the seeds of how this starts. Sometimes you may get an executive sponsor who will start and really drive this down, but unless they really know what they're doing, at the end of the day, if you don't have passionate people involved, it's going to go nowhere. It will fall apart. So as we were starting to meet, we started coordinating ideas, we started driving out changes, and as part of that, we're like, you know what? How do other groups do it? Why are we reinventing the wheel? So Kim started by doing just a tremendous amount of research on centers of excellence, scheduled meetings with other companies, not even in our specific role, because at the time we couldn't even find any BA center of excellence to compare. And we started looking at how are they structured, how do they work, how could we make them work within our environment? And from that aspect, we started to get some really good ideas. So we decided that for us, because we had a small group of change agents, the best thing to do was to start up a center of excellence that had the official role to drive changes and improvements to the BA practice. And we were absolutely shut down and told to stop talking about it. Because center of excellence, it turns out, is one of the taboo words in the organization at the time. It meant an elitist group of people that were doing things on their own and outside of our existing methodology solely for the purpose of boosting their own careers. I did a lot of research. I've been unable to find that definition in the industry anywhere, but somebody apparently saw it. So what do you do when you're shut down? Well, we just kept going. Nobody had stopped us from doing work and volunteering before, so why not continue? So instead, we started referring to ourselves as a process action team. We would take broken processes, figure out how to fix them, and introduce those changes and go. And we would slowly add people, get volunteers. We had a core group of volunteers who were doing a little bit more work, and we kept making change after change after change. And we started working with cross-functional groups. Our infrastructure team was frustrated because every time they tried to size an infrastructure, it didn't work. Not every time, but often it didn't work. So I worked with that coordinator, and we created a set of standard non-functional templates for people to use, all the way down to a help guide. So we figured if you know what you're doing, here's a standard form that you can use so that it's very predictable project to project. And it was only 22 lines in Excel, very easy template to use. What if you don't know anything? We had an interview guide. We told how to find your stakeholders, here's the questions to ask them, and when you get that answer, plug it into this cell. So it's things like, what are acceptable maintenance hours? Because if you ask what an acceptable maintenance window is, what's your business user going to say? Never. There's no maintenance. It's high availability. I've got to have it. What are some other things you hear when you talk about availability? 24/7, yeah, there's no downtimes, everything's a peak. And so what do? Then you hand them a bill, and it's like, well, your infrastructure's now going to cost you $20 million because of what you spent. They're like, no, you guys are just inflating prices. No, we gave you what you're asking for. So we started forming these cross-functional teams to address some of the problems. We also started using best practices training and mentoring. Since Russ was delivering the training, when we made changes, we could incorporate it into his changes. When we needed things discussed in the whole community, we ran those through Kim, and they got distributed through the PDM meetings. When we saw projects where managers misbehaving, we sat in on project meetings and helped them use the BAs properly. Because since we were seeing this coming from outside the group, they inferred that we must be experts, and they actually listened to us. So we didn't have any authority, but it was assumed authority because we showed up and acted like we cared and we knew what was going on. So try that, even in your projects. If you sound confident, people will believe you. I get in trouble all the time at home because I sound confident when expressing an opinion. And a certain spouse might think that I'm stating facts that I'm just making up. And I'm like, no, it's an opinion. But, it's easy to get those mixed up. So we continue to act as a center of excellence with absolutely no authority, no recognition. Our goal was, we're just going to fly below the radar. We're going to keep getting things done, and eventually, if people like it enough, maybe they'll stick with it. So then we kind of thought a little bit bigger, and this one was my fault. So if anyone's interested in actually the specs, what we did was we said, listen, we had goals that got us to the year 2010, and the transformation was completed probably about 90% of what they hoped to accomplish. What are we going to do in the next 10 years? What is success going to look like? So based on the principles in the book Switch by Dan and Chip Heath, we set a strategic, bold goal for the year 2020, and it was a play on words, a clear vision of what would happen in the year 2020 and what our practice would be like. So we actually created a platform, a success platform, strategic goals for the BA practice, and a process of how we thought we could achieve them. even a process of how we were going to evaluate changes and requests that were coming in. Did it map to the goals? Did it map to the standards? So that whole platform is available. If you grab the green cards at the front or the back on my website, you can download the entire presentation and use it, reuse it any way you can. If you need a PDF copy, just email me. And I've also got videos up from other times I've given that presentation if you want a deeper explanation of it. So our goal really was pretty bold. We wanted to be the benchmark company for business analysis, not just in our industry, but everywhere. We wanted to develop the reputation that if you wanted to be the best BA in the world, you would hope to work for a regional bank. And in some ways it worked because the message got out there and the quality of candidates we started getting went way up. So we presented this to our sponsors. So we presented this to the project management office, we presented this to the PDMs, and we were all excited. We're like, look, this is where we're going to take you, this is how we're going to help. And they hated it. Absolutely hated the idea. They were like, you guys are just volunteers, you have no authority, you have no reason to do this, you cannot have a platform, you cannot have standards, you can't set a way of governing changes unless that was coming from a center of excellence. So go back and form a center of excellence and use this as your platform. What? I mean, seriously, we tried. Okay, we'll give it a shot. So by presenting something that was bold that they couldn't handle, they shot it down and said, no, go back to the drawing board and formalize how you think this group would run, and then elect this as your platform. So we switched directions and went back temporarily to how would the COE work, and taking into more factors. So here's where we really had a problem. Who's giving you authority and why do you need it? If you have an autonomous group, you can do whatever you want until somebody challenges your authority. And you can either convince them that it's the right thing to do, which means you're convincing them without authority, or you get authority. So we had to figure out where was our authority going to come from. So if we looked at who was actually impacting the business BAs, 80% of it was coming from the project management office, the PMO. The 80% of your daily life was governed by that group. But 60% of the training was controlled by the PDMs and 40% by the PMO, the official governance training. So which group should be the sponsor? So what we needed to do was so we decided that to really have authority, we wanted it from both groups. We wanted the PDMs to endorse us as the official role advocates, working for them to help, but they controlled the job, they controlled performance evaluations, we had nothing to do with their functions, but we were going to be advocates for improving the role within the bank. And we wanted the PMO to support us as, if you're going to change anything that impacts the VAs, it needs to be vetted and approved through our group. We'll do the work, we'll vet it, we'll put all the work behind it, but your changes need to run through us. And at times they kept trying to form groups, cross-functional groups, to evaluate changes, and it was just dysfunctional. When you get 22 people on a conference call, all arguing only their point and not understanding what a change is going to do, it was a train wreck. So we tried to centralize that, and we had one representative on that particular board. So when we had some additional changes or challenges was the PMO and the PDMs kept going through staffing changes. We had different players. And we also had additional resources that were joining our action team, so we're trying to figure out what was going on there. So what we ended up having to do was, we listed out, we met and figured out what are all the obstacles to getting us officially chartered and approved, and started knocking them down. The first one that we could not get past was our development managers absolutely refused to have joint authority. They wanted exclusive control. They said, we own the role, we own your team, we will decide who's on your group, what your group does, and we will approve all of your decisions. Well, that's not authority. I mean, that's domineering, and they've already proven that they weren't helping, or our group wouldn't have a need to exist. But in the end of the day, the PMO would refuse to stand up and fight, and so it was better for us to go with one group authority, one group sponsorship, than two, just to get it going. but we always intended, and we always showed in all of our stuff, that the collaboration was joint between both groups. So with the sponsor authority, we had a long battle. This took several weeks. And it was really the control of the group. Who is going to approve everything we did? We eliminated that and said, no, if it's a change coming out of the group, this is why the group exists, you don't get that. We won that battle. When it comes to members, who gets to decide? And what we landed on that was they can recommend members, we can recommend members, we will form our group, and they have basically veto power. So if they think that somebody doesn't have the time, doesn't have the skill set, isn't ready, it'll be too much of a distraction, they can veto our members. When it came to who would chair the event, that actually created a more interesting one. At the time, Russ and I were co-chairing. We worked really well together. It didn't matter, we just flowed, and whoever could take a meeting, it wasn't an issue. I didn't get along well with one of the PDMs who didn't like change, and I'm a change agent, so I'm a demon to her. And so part of her resistance was she thought that this was something I was doing to pad my resume. Sure, it will look good on my resume, but no, I was doing this because I cared. So finally, after meeting with my PDM at the time, we figured out that she was not going to let this group go forward if I was involved. So I resigned from the COE and stepped down completely and stopped attending so that she could not hold this against the COE. We had charter approval the next week. And it was something that was that silly. Now, yes, I was still working behind the scenes, I was still helping out, but I had no official role in the group at that time. So how's this story playing out? How many people here would like to take that journey? But you guys are the change agents. You guys are the leaders in your organization. You wouldn't be here today if you didn't care so much about your job that you're willing to take time out and make up all the work you're missing just to be here learning how to be better and how to help other people be better. All of this is stuff you can do. All you have to do is care and want to make a difference and then try again, and try again. This took us 3 years to get officially chartered. I mean, that coincides with the average length of our projects, but this was an endurance run. This was not something that happened overnight. So, a few lessons learned that we found. First, really, you're going to hit a tipping point, which is, in your organization, people will do what they're assigned, they'll do what's expected. But an organization will always gravitate to the people that will volunteer, that will take ownership, that will help out above and beyond. So if you're helping, if you're making things better, you are going to be a magnet for change, you're going to be seen as a change agent, you are going to be given more opportunities. There will be setbacks. There will be times where you're doing something and the wrong person is going to get a little aggravated and it might fall apart, but keep going. So our group existed and gained enough momentum that it couldn't be ignored because we were demonstrating so much value to the organization. We were quantifying it. We were reporting on it. We had groups writing in and thanking our managers. Delivery managers were acknowledging the changes and the improvements they were seeing. So the only choice they had was support it or end it and tell the organization that mediocrity is okay. And luckily, that didn't happen. When you're talking about any sort of a group, where are you going to get that authority? Where are you going to get that sponsorship? It is a really tough decision between the easy route and where that authority really needs to be. If you've got an organization where nothing is official unless you've got executive sponsorship, you're going to have to work on and get that executive sponsorship. You can get a lot done in the meantime, but at the end of the day, you know, you've got to have somebody that's going to support your decision if something gets escalated, or at least back you, or at least point them back to you. So if they try and jump over your head and say, hey, I disagree with this, well, go talk to them and justify why you think you're right. You don't need them to take an active role, you just need them to let you work. You've got to have thought leaders. You've got them in your organization. Do you know who they are? Seth Godin, in his famous book, Linchpin, defines the thought leaders, the people that the organization cannot live without, as the linchpins of the organization. And the linchpin's that little tiny pin that holds a wheel on so that your car or truck or wagon keeps running. So find the thought leaders, start working with them, get their help, identify them, and then find ways of leveraging their experience, their talent. Because that's, if you're dealing with a COE, if you don't have thought leaders, if you don't have senior people who understand the organization and how it should work, and a combination of both, you're going to have challenges. Youth and energy is great, just not on the center of excellence. Community of practice, it's more widespread, it's much more organic, not as big of an issue. And a COE only will work and only sustain momentum if there's an organizational need. If you've got a well-tuned organization, a COE that's coming in to try and really dramatically change things isn't going to be successful. A COE that is measuring and setting up KPIs, demonstrating value, looking for point improvements, helping with point in time or critical issues, then you have to evolve what the group does based on your organization needs. And I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So, in kind of Shark Tank fashion, in the weeks since then, what's happened? So this is why I was saying your group needs to evolve, and you need to be patient. So our corporate project management office was transformed into an enterprise project management office, and they changed focus radically several times. So who they were, what they were doing, what they thought their role was, became extremely different than the group we were originally working with. The management in that group and the direction they took it changed dramatically. So who we were working with, how we got changes through, became really problematic. It became exclusively funding and project management focused, with BAs being an afterthought. So in one way, it was easy to get changes in, but those changes really weren't mattering because there was no support for them. So we had to go out and train and support. We did a reorg and got rid of all of our development managers. And we had all the BAs now report into the work streams, and the work stream managers and delivery managers they reported to. So now we had people in the organization who didn't understand what a BA was, hiring and managing BAs. And instead of having 4 managers to work with for training, development, continuity, we now had 22 delivery managers and potentially 40 to 50 work stream managers or work stream leads who are now responsible for the BAs from a staffing and training standpoint. So needless to say, there's no training budget anymore. If you've got a training budget, aren't you going to send your developers or your architect to the newest, coolest tool you're implementing? You're not going to send a BA to a cool conference like this, even though you're going to get 10 times as much value out of it. So with this, the COE had to evolve. We were no longer change agents. We ended up having to fill the void for the PDMs. So we became the support organization. We became the shoulder to cry on. So each work stream, before we had promoted and finally gotten acknowledgement for a work stream BA, basically a lead BA who would, not from an HR standpoint manage, but from a delivery and quality, manage all of the BAs in that work stream and be the thought leader for that. So we pulled that group together into the COE and made it an informational group, kind of like you're doing. So we actually took a step to where some of your groups are right now. It was an information group with a little bit of change. Mentioned the EPMO changing and having a new organization. So after all this, and after being truthfully beaten down over and over again because nobody cared about the BAs in the project management office and didn't care what happened, Russ left the organization. Just finally quit. He's super happy with where he is now. He's able to finally do the things that we had intended to do. So they didn't backfill him. There is no BA support in our enterprise project management office. They are exclusively focused on PMs and letting the PMs manage and dictate work however they want. So there's no staffing or continuity. Then recently we reclassified all of our jobs, relabeled salary bands, and we relabeled all of our BAs in our enterprise information services as business system analysts. So we basically said, you will no longer be involved on the business side, business process improvements, operational improvements. You're just going to be the BA who takes notes and does the functional requirements for the systems that we're going to implement. And the business BAs in our BIOs, our business information officers, have the responsibility for figuring out whether or not that system should exist. So we've taken another step back and made a lot of the BAs order takers unless they already have the relationship and are working. But new BAs coming in have to build that relationship and that trust to be able to even get into the meetings that count. And so now, what is that group? We don't have Russ leading it. I can't lead it because I've been in different roles for the last 5 years. So we are using volunteers, and it's now transformed and is operating as a community of practice. Because we don't have leadership, we don't have support, we don't have authority, there's nothing to change because we can't change it, it's not going to make a difference. So instead, we are a larger shoulder to cry on and a collaboration group. And in some cases, there are teams who are coming forward and saying, listen, we need help in this area. You guys know who the experts are. Can you pull some volunteers? Can you help us out? And so the group's still functioning and doing that. We're evaluating potentially a different way of doing project collaboration. So they're including our group in the review and feedback. At least we're participating in that. I don't really feel that our feedback is being widely used. So this is what's happened over the last 8 years. From establishing a BA role, to establishing a center of excellence, to having to adopt that center of excellence back to more of a support organization, more of a standards and consistency organization, to now it's operating as a community of practice to help fill in the information gap that we have no training coming from HR managers, from the PMO, from any group. So volunteers helping each other out is the only support we have for the BAs at the moment. And fortunately, we haven't gone the full route like the retailer I mentioned earlier, where we're just going to say everything's agile and we're going to eliminate the BAs. We haven't gotten to that point yet. We did make a strategic decision to say that in this environment, only senior BAs will be successful. So when we reclassified the jobs, we eliminated everybody that was at entry level or mid-level and are going strictly on with senior BAs. Which means we have some talent, but we have no succession plan. We have nobody who will take over, nobody that will develop within the organization, and probably nobody that will finish their career with us. So we've kind of breezed through, unfortunately, facts about the company. It's available on the presentation and download, so I'm happy to read that line by line if anybody cares. One of the most important things you can see about conferences like this is the connections you're going to make. Often the most valuable things I've learned have been in the hallway conversations, the dinner conversations, the networking conversations, where you find out suddenly I'm not alone. It's almost like you're going to a convention and you thought you were the only penguin, and all of a sudden there's nothing but penguins. And you're like, this is so cool. And finding out that there's other people experiencing the problems. And you've got people that are transforming and getting into the role. You've got people that have been in the role their entire career. You've got thought leaders like Kevin and Jared who are here and are willing to talk to you at no charge, usually until you get them on site. But you've got them here, so take advantage of that. And so what I want to do is, we've actually got about a half hour to discuss anything you want, directly related to this, not related to this. So I want to just kind of open it up and see, because I want to make sure, one of the big concerns here in any session is, I want to make sure everyone here is absolutely happy that you picked this session, that you got something extremely valuable out, and there is absolutely nothing that would indicate that you weren't completely and totally satisfied with this session. So I have 30 minutes to convince you that this was the most awesome thing you've done. Yes?
Hi, Hans.
Hello.
What do you think? Like you did the rise and fall of the Phoenix and everything.
happen if we actually were still pursuing BA 2020?
Yeah, no, what would have caused you to be successful?
What would it cost? So ultimately, I think there's a gap, an understanding gap in some of our senior leadership as to what type of an IT organization we should be, what our strategy to get there was, and any constraints we needed to follow. So allowing a project management office to control all aspects of the projects and only focus on the PMs is a huge mistake. And we still, and that decision has really hurt us. So if we had been able to convince the PMO to continue an investment in the BA and continuing a partnership, I think we would have been radically successful. When you look at reorgs, and you look at reorgs that nobody's involved, very limited people are involved with, it was outside of our control. There was nothing we could do to save the PDMs. Every year on our Voice of Teammates surveys, it is called out as a gap that they want them back. They feel the loss, and most of the managers can't fill that gap on their plate. So when I transformed in as a workstream manager, I was given a team of 8 people, and the expectation that I had to deliver $9.5 million of project value that year. And so in a period of 6 months, I had to ramp up the entire group with vendors, with staff, with offshore, it was usually an average of about 45, 50 people on site. So do you think I'm scheduling one-on-ones with all my team, that I'm conducting training sessions, that I have role meetings, but I didn't have one-on-ones? Most organizations only focused in on FTEs. I focused in on the roles of the people because we were a blended team, so I wanted to reinforce a one-team attitude. So if we had properly trained the managers, I think they might have given more support for the organization. If we had funding at any point and actually could have had dedicated staff, I think we could have done wonders. Because if you're thinking about 1 to 3, at most 5 salaries at a BA level, I mean, look at that compared to where your organizational spend is. So a simple amount of funding, I think, would have caused it to skyrocket. We were on track to absolutely be a benchmark. Join in and add your thoughts, too.
Well, I was going to say, it's one more question about, like, my experience, and that sounds like a huge organization, first of all, right? Because my experience in some organizations is the project managers really do like that partnership with the BA.
Yep.
Did you see any of that happen?
Very, very rare. There were a few PMs who appreciated and understood BAs and used them properly. We had a small group that we forcibly re-educated and got to be much better partners. But so our organization is PM focused, so the PMs have full accountability for everything that goes wrong with the project. Not anything that goes right, but everything that goes wrong. So they tend to be micromanagers. Our managers hired micromanagers. So these were the exact opposite people you would want when you're trying to build a collaborative team. There were some that helped, but not a lot. So that was a big problem.
So question, let's say you have, purely hypothetically, a PMO existing, and you know there's a bunch of BAs who want to create a center of excellence or something like that.
Yep.
You know, they're not likely to get funding, but the PMO is willing to help out. What tasks would you do in the first 6 months to establish that?
Absolutely. Great idea. So if you've got a little bit of support, or I'll just say maybe not support, but a lack of opposition, and the people willing to make changes, pick the things that your core team is passionate about. Your team knows what they want to fix. They know what's going to have the most value, and if they're passionate about it, it'll be more fun. And that'll keep their interest when you have massive setbacks. So figure those things that will prove that the group has value. So for us, non-functional requirements was a huge one. Changing out the templates so that there was consistent font and formatting. And what we did was, instead of creating a template you built from, we created an outline that you deleted from. So if you're not doing use cases, delete out the use cases. You don't need a data model, delete out the data model. So instead of people spending all their time in, because, all right, how many people here are OCD, one of the best tools of a VA, I can't deal with mismatched fonts and inconsistent formatting and how many hours of my life has been wasted getting everything to line up perfectly and setting up styles, and then somebody comes in and they highlight and they don't use the style. No, styles are reusable. It's object-oriented documentation. Sorry, most of you took it. So with that, having templates and then going out and educating, and then with the templates and with some small process changes, we made changes to the tools. We made changes to the training. We started developing a closer partnership with our testing organization because they were so separated that there were tons of conflicts. Basically, our testers wanted the BAs to write the test cases and the acceptance criteria. BAs, I don't believe, ever should. So we had to educate the organization that basically said there are roles and there are people. A BA, Bob the BA, can be a BA, and he can also serve as the tester on a project, but he is filling two roles. It is not the BA responsible for testing. So drawing that distinction. So if you've got conflicts with a testing organization or test cases, looking for ways to partner. If you're making their life better or doing things, helping them out with things that annoy them, it's amazing how much support they're going to give you because they feel overworked. They feel stressed out, and if you're helping, I mean, that's just awesome. Yep.
Had a somewhat similar experience to yours.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm happy and sad for you.
Well, it was similar that we were trying to create a community of practice in our organization. It's a consulting organization with branches across the country.
Okay.
And, we had people in Winnipeg and Halifax and all BAs with similar needs and wanted to be able to share and that sort of thing. And we were very ambitious. We wanted to do this not just for BAs, but for PMs and the developers and blah, blah. And we had, where we got shut down was in terms of the sort of politics, very similar to your case, because there were certain groups within the company that felt they owned a particular thing. We were seen as a challenge. And the one place where we had success was actually the PM community of practice, because there was no one in the company to actually own that. So they went straight ahead. But the other areas, there was an acknowledged, within the organizational hierarchy, there's someone that owned that piece, and we weren't able to move forward. We sort of thought, well, once people see how great the PM practice center is, and then others will join on board. And now, since left the organization, maybe it has worked over the years, but certainly at the time. So I mean, I would say the big thing is looking at the within your organization structure, who thinks they own that particular thing, and they're the ones that you really need to work very closely with, because if you're outside the organizational structure, they can just shut you down immediately, and it's,
And a lot of that is...
hard. So you need to kind of partner with them rather than being seen as challenging them. It's hard.
It's how you sell it. So if you go in and start telling groups how to do their job, they're going to shut you down. I will shut you down, and I'm very collaborative, because nobody likes to be put back like that. But if you can somehow sell it that, hey, we've heard that there's this problem or this concern or this opportunity. We think we can help or would like to help. Can we work with you? Can we do this part and see if you think this would make a difference? And if you're volunteering, you may be able to get further along, and if you can also allow them to take credit for that, take credit for the change, then they've got the glory. So a lot of the things we were doing, we were unfortunately supporting the groups that were fighting us, but we were getting changes done. But at the end of the day, when it's not them at the meeting who's making things better, it's not them who's rolling out the training, it's not them who's helping with the communication, your name will get known. That group's name will be known as the catalyst for that change. And then that's where the authority ends up being assumed. People started coming to us because they knew we could make a difference. So we had to say no sometimes if we couldn't. But we were picking the groups that were basically low-hanging fruit, and we thought we could help. And for us, we ended up stabilizing this in BA 2020, was we created 5 standards, and I don't have them memorized offhand, so unfortunately. The change had to be completed in less than 60 days, under 200 man hours. It had to reduce the amount of work. It had to add value. And if it didn't meet all the criteria that we had set, we wouldn't do the change. So we weren't going to create something that added any more work, even if the value justified it. We wanted to make people's jobs easier. That's where we focused. If it was more than 200 hours, we needed to decompose it into a smaller sprint. So we really broke it into more manageable pieces that we could roll out. And, practice agile, practice iterative. This is your chance to just get something out there. 80% of something is better than 100% of perfect, which never comes. So just keep rolling out whatever you can, rolling out the influence, coaching, changing, wherever you can, and see. You've got to know your audience and know, there were landmines that I never expected. I mean, somebody that, the fact that COE was a swear word in our organization never would have occurred to me. The fact that we had a manager who wouldn't allow who had personal biases and didn't believe in it and was looking for ways of shutting down, we had to remove the obstacles. Yes?
I just wondered, what is the relationship between you talking about the IT business analyst and then the business analyst? Like, was there any connection there?
We still haven't met.
Oh, so there was
No.
never a collaboration?
So in our goal, and if we had kept going, we were going to stabilize the IT BAs and leverage that and then start pulling the business BAs, starting with the most receptive ones and then making the rest jealous, and then build a BA community of practice across the organization. The problem was, when we transformed in Project 2010, we took testers, developers, analysts, data modelers, and said, you're now a BA, go write requirements. Of course they failed. We put them through a full series of training. In our organization, we chose B2T training because it was perfectly aligned to the BA body of knowledge. It was modular. We could use it and then expand into their other courses. It was a good choice for us. So we taught the BAs what it was to be a BA, and we cycled a good 10 to 20% out who we found other jobs for or who just left the organization because they really weren't BAs. The business never went through that transformation. So a lot of their BAs were data analysts. They were modelers. They were a few process people. But really they weren't doing any BA work. And the reason we know that is every project we had, we never worked with their BAs. How are you going to do a transformational IT project that affects the business and changes your process and not meet a BA on the business side? So yeah, that was a gap. So Russ had started, when we expanded to a community of practice and we started organizationally trying to bridge the gap, we actually now have a chief technology officer for each segment of the technology and a business bio, a business information officer representing the business who are supposed to work together and prioritize IT projects, leverage changes, work with enterprise architecture to create a strategy. So when that partnership was formed and they were trying to make it work, Russ started forming a community of practice with the BAs under both groups to try and get them talking and working together, and had luck, but there wasn't an appetite. There just wasn't a need. I mean, you see it when we renamed our jobs business system analysts. Again, organizationally, someone wanted to put it back in the box. They weren't appreciated. So we have some changes that I think hopefully will be coming in a greater appreciation. So our COE is laying hidden and dormant, waiting for, it's like a desert, we're waiting for that first rain, and then the minute we've got traction, that group's going to sprout right back up, and we already know the first 10 people who will be on that team, because they're still doing work. Yes, sir?
The end of the templates you changed, you made better, did they get scrapped or they still in use?
Still in use. Yep. We went through 2 revisions of them, 2 official revisions. The first revision, I made a lot of the changes because as I was going through a project, I basically created a requirements package and then stripped out the project-specific data, put in some examples, and we used that as a template. Then after it had been in use for about a year and a half, we found some more changes. So we had a small committee run through and fix some stuff, and they polished it up, made some areas clearer, and put those in, and those are the only templates that exist today. We brought in standard non-functional requirements. So for different business areas, there is a group of standard pre-approved requirements that the owner for that area goes through line by line and sits with the project and say which ones apply. And that's for security, enterprise records management, and there's so many others. And then we did the non-functionals, which were the variable requirements. That template's still in effect, and they're still being used. Yep.
Those checklists generally available to people outside SunTrust Bank?
I'm working on that. So yes, I'm trying. A lot of them contain extremely specific data, and so if we talk about what our 3 approved recovery time objectives or recovery point objectives are, I can't get that out. So what I'm trying to do is create a scrubbed version that creates more industry standard requirements and strips out anything that could be inferred and then make those available. I don't remember if I have the NFR template scrubbed and ready. I might have that. If it is, I've got it on my site. And I do have some areas, like the presentation I'm giving tomorrow is on requirements change management. I have templates and examples of that I've scrubbed and are available for download immediately. So I'm trying to, and I'm hoping to have them ready by BBC, because I'm presenting on basically a security view, a view of security for BAs. All the things, all the terms that you've probably never been exposed to, that you really need to know as a BA to help prevent data breaches and not introduce problems. So I'm going to try and create a generic version of the security requirements and the records retention requirements that I can have ready for that in November. So keep hounding me, eventually I'll get to it. Or create one that's so outside. And if anyone has one that they want to work with together, I'm all about sharing credit or giving you full credit. I'd love to start with something if someone's got one that's more industry standard. I just haven't found one. There's a question over here earlier, or a hand.
I had a hand.
Okay.
So you mentioned a couple of times the PM Center of Excellence and then Agile group and kind of sitting in between these schools. Do you see that as a trend? Because there is quite a lot of influence now that technologists have on direction and practices and processes, and we're, as the BA community, we're kind of stuck in the middle because PM's well entrenched in the center. So do you see that as a continued challenge for Center of Excellence?
Yeah. So I'm going to speak absolute heresy, and people will want to hurt me afterwards, and that's okay. I've heard it. I'm a big opponent to Agile. Not because Agile doesn't make a lot of sense, and it doesn't work extremely well, but so much evil is being done in the name of Agile and abuse and devastation that it's really frustrating. We're almost getting to the point where we can do that. If you really want to know where Agile will end up, go back and look at RUP. RUP laid out exactly how your projects are going to go, whether you like it or not, and the cycles and the work efforts you go through. So I think that the misuse of Agile, the inappropriate roles, the inappropriate responsibilities is absolutely hurting the BA practice. When we started Agile, the first thing the groups did was say, we don't need any BAs. And I argued with the people implementing over and over again that you don't have to call them BAs, but somebody has to vet what it is you're trying to do. And if all you're doing is taking notes and you already know the answers, go ahead and implement it and see how much money you're going to waste. Because you're going to put in garbage and it's not going to work. And you know what they've done for the last decade? They put in garbage and it doesn't work. And it's been a horrible mess. And they're seen now as the success because look at how many iterations and releases they're getting out. But there's no value in their releases. There's such a delay. It's awful. So I think that's a problem. So part of it is, if you can form a group, even if a secret conspiracy group, of teaching people within Agile projects how to get the BA fundamentals in. Change the names. Don't use anything that people will recognize. Come up with code names if you need to, or decoder rings. Have fun with it, but get people to really appreciate that. And work with the people. Every organization is typically driven by one role, whether it's a delivery manager, whether it's the project manager. For us, it's really the PMs. So until we have the PMs appreciating the BAs, we're going to continue to have trouble. We tried for 6 years to form a PM, Center of Excellence, based on what we did, and it failed. And why did it fail? Because the BAs are about improvement. The BAs are about fixing stuff, identifying the stuff that doesn't work. PMs only live within the project. They are only about getting stuff done on time, in budget, and to the scope that was agreed upon as they can prove in writing. So why would they have a Center of Excellence? They don't care about changing anything. They don't care about the processes. They don't see how that's impacting their ability for success. So it's been just horrible trying to get them started. Instead, there's just a monthly PM meeting where they get updates on what tool changes, what funding changes. And a lot of it is the impact is just, the impact of changes that hit them, they just accept and move on. They say, okay, that's one more thing, I'm going to have to redo my entire project schedule. We do annual funding, and then we pick a different model every year of how we're going to do forecasts and put money allocated to projects or work areas. And last February, the project management or enterprise EPMO changed the way we calculate capitalization. I can't move expense dollars to capital dollars or back and forth. They are locked in for the entire year. When you change how I capitalize labor, you have now blown out every single project I have done, including in flight. Why did they do that 3 months after we locked the budget? Somebody allowed that to happen. Those are the things that are killing us. Or,
I was going to say, I'm not going to kill you.
please.
But I'm asking that how much I really.
Oh, they do. They work great if you do it right.
Well, sure, build the right thing and build the thing right. Yeah, I'm not my soapbox now. Don't worry about it. In large organizations, I think there is, with cultures of layers, that you're describing, I think there is great challenges, right? I absolutely agree with that. Let's start somewhere.
Yeah. So one of my coaches and mentors, brilliant branding consultant, and somebody who's helped me so much throughout my career because of his ability to simplify things to the core matter. And it's something that, grab me after this or any time or one of the networking events, and I'm happy to talk more about it. But he calls them bite-sized doables because it's really easy to remember. Find the things that are small and you can do them. Find the things, nibble away at it, get enough of it done. Another way of saying that is in Variable Scar by Spider Robinson and Robert Heinlein. They talk about if you've got a problem that's too complex to solve. Sorry, Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Heinlein. And you don't know what to do, start with the piece you can solve. Solve it. And the bigger problem will slowly look easier to solve. And if you chip away at the parts you can have an influence on, eventually the larger problem goes away. That's the evolutionary change. We didn't go from punch cards to cell phones in one iteration or one agile sprint. It took a lot of time, a lot of failures, a lot of mistakes. Your organizational change is like that in molasses, in a tar pit, during an ice age. It is going to take a long time. You've got to be super patient. So absolutely, you're right. And nothing against, there are some phenomenal agile groups, agile companies, agile coaches. And when implemented in a small enough and controlled enough group, can be extremely successful. I think a lot of projects would be much better if they could follow a similar iterative process, whether it's iterative, whether it's rough, whether it is agile. Go for it. We need to strive, and eventually we'll get it right before the next name comes up.
Just go back to your budget conundrum. You found a way around that whole capital versus expense lockdown thing?
No. That one I don't know that we'll ever be able to get around. But what we are trying to do is, the group I'm with now is an innovations team, so we are implementing programs and tools that are grassroots and extremely disruptive, and we're challenging and showing the organization through very small, very inexpensive efforts where everything is broken, and slowly starting to get the attention to fix them. And one of the things that is hot on the list for next year is moving from an annual planning to an annual budget allocation and quarterly planning. Actually, for the first time ever, giving the ability to kill a project. we delayed projects, but we never killed them. So now we're starting about, if we can break that, if I can get it 4 times a year, that's dramatically reduced my risk. But actually, then looking at the dollars, it's tough. When I managed the work stream, I managed a $17 million budget, and at the end of the year, we had a variance of less than $500 on our budget to actuals. And really, it was because if you know what you have to spend at the end of the year, you can shift work, resources, and costs. You can load them in if you've got extra money. You can push them out. If you aren't going to spend the money and don't have a reason to, you can do a budget transfer to somebody who's over budget. So for me, it was really easy balancing the budget, but a lot of groups struggle with that and don't even know how to do it. And that continues to be a problem. We just got to get, we also use different project accounting than GL accounting, and you're accountable for GL, but funding is done through projects, and the numbers never, ever match because they're calculated differently. So how can you ever be right? So you just pick your balance. So we've got 7 minutes or less here going. So I want to see, is there anybody here who did not feel that this session was a great use of your time? Because I want to make it valuable. I want to do something to really help and make sure that everybody got something out of this, because I know this is a little across the board, it's a little use case specific, but I want to make sure that at least everybody got something they felt was a valuable takeaway. Anybody did? Awesome. Any high points? Anything that you learned today that you might want to take back to your organization? What were the key things that you saw, you heard, you thought about that could influence you? Yes?
Operating by stealth.
Stealth. Oh, I love subversion, deceit, grassroots tactics. Best way of getting things done in a complex organization. People object to using those terms, but I see nothing wrong with them. Help people when they don't know they're being helped. This isn't the show Intervention where you pull your managers and your PMs together and you suddenly set up a firing squad telling them everything they're doing wrong. I firmly believe in setting up the bare minimum of guardrails and traffic control devices to keep everybody going the direction you want them to go. And spike strips, caverns, moats with alligators if they try and go the wrong direction. Make it so painful for them to do the wrong thing that they really have no choice but to do the right thing. And so find ways of making people be miserable when they're not doing the right thing, and have a bright shining guidelight, a lighthouse for them to follow the right way. And it's amazing how successful you'll be. It's tough, it's an art. Yes, absolutely. Bring treats. I pay out of my own pocket. I have a giant candy box. I took a copier paper box that is filled with 40 pounds of chocolates just to keep people happy. And if we're going to have a contentious meeting, I set that in the middle of the table, and you wouldn't believe how many people dig into it and relax and have fun, because I've completely thrown off the paradigm of a stuffy, we're not going to get anything done corporate meeting. Bring donuts, bring drinks. Start with not quite an icebreaker, but start with something that's going to set people out of their comfort zone enough that you can bring them back to the change you want. Anything else people want to share? Yes?
How did you decide, what is the first change that you're going to pick to do to prove that you guys were...
That one was easy. I was selfish and I picked the one that I cared about. I mean, it's really that simple. You made a choice to pick this session over 2 others, and I greatly appreciate that. You have a reason. It's the same thing. Pick something that you're interested in, that you care about, and you think you can be successful. I was so fed up with the templates. They were abysmal. I mean, the worst things I've ever seen. I mean, a kindergartner could have done a better job. So I didn't want to have to use them and suffer. So I created my own package and said, hey, when I'm done with this, all I have to do is go and clean it up and delete the data out, and I've got a new template. And I had it in within a week of editing. I gave it to Russ, he took a look at it, and he goes, well, can we change these? Here's a few notes, made some changes, and he stuck it in. He's put it into a release. Nobody even reviewed it. And nobody cared. We just announced that there was a new template that was friendly. We wrote a one-page guide. We announced it at the PDM meeting and showed how they could use it. And then we were available for coaching sessions for a couple of weeks, or when there were new people. And they just adopted it. we introduced a project collaboration platform through another team I was with, and the PMO refused to allow it. They would not allow us to use this SharePoint collaboration template. So we said, okay, that's fine. So we got volunteers. We found projects that weren't happy with shared drives, and we said, here, we set you up a project site, here's how to use it, have fun. And it had its own training videos, it was so cool. And then when 80 different projects were all using this template, the PMO said, that needs to be an official tool, we own it, we're taking credit. So we already had half of the investment projects for the year already using the tool, just because it was available to them. So things like that. Look for things where the demand is so great that people will really want. So let me close out here, because I'm getting my 2-minute or 5-minute warning. I gave myself a little more of a buffer. Please, stay connected. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I've got all the sessions, just about all the sessions I do on a wide variety of topics are available on video on YouTube. They're linked to the different presentations and downloads. I charge absolutely nothing because this is my passion. I would love, if I can make a difference to anybody, it means a lot to me. So use them, reuse them. If you need a PDF copy, if you have questions, reach out to me. I'm here to help you. After this, there's a career panel that's going to be really good. That's going to in the main room that we were in this morning. So definitely you check that out. And then if anyone's interested on how to use basically military and hospital triage practices and apply that to requirements management and how you can turn everything and every project into simply easy change management, join me tomorrow. I think it's like 2:15-ish. And I think it's, maybe, I don't know which room it's in. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.